The BMPCC 4K gives you huge flexibility, but the wrong settings can quietly reduce image quality. In this deep dive, we'll cover every setting, what it changes and when to use it, updated for the latest firmware. First, let's go through a quick overview of the screen. Here you can see the frame rate of your project. Then, the shutter speed, or shutter angle in this case. It mainly affects the motion of your image. Then the iris, so the aperture. Then we have the ISO, where we set the analog and digital gain of your sensor. And here we've got dual native ISO. That means that 400 and 3200 are two native values for your ISO. More on that later. Then white balance and tint. If you are using Blackmagic RAW, you can change it later in editing software like DaVinci Resolve. Then we have the monitoring tools. And the first one is focus assist. You can change the value of focus assist here. I tend to use around 60 because it doesn't cover my image too much, but I can see if I have everything in focus. Then we have zebras, and here you can set the safety margin of the exposure. It's very helpful to make sure that you are not overexposing something important. In the newer software you can also set the second zebra that shows you kind of a sweet spot for exposure, the mid-gray. Then we have the frame guides. And the setting is only for monitoring, so that doesn't mean that the recorded screen is smaller. It might be very helpful, especially if you're recording for social media. Then we have the grid, and here you can turn on and off the grid. I use it a lot. You can turn on horizon, crosshair or dot as a center of your frame, but I don't use it as much. And I also have the grid here on the button at the top of the camera, because it's really useful on the go. The next thing is safe area. I actually don't use it that much. Then we have one of the most powerful tools, false colors. And using false colors you can see how the light really behaves in your image. So you can see if something is too bright, like the sky now is red, or something is too dark. You can see that the foreground is now really dark. If I make it brighter, the background becomes overexposed, and actually everything becomes overexposed. And I really recommend to assign false colors to other key. In my case it's F1 button. I also have a separate video about false colors, and I think that it's the most important skill to learn while using a manual camera. And the last thing here is kind of obvious, it's the brightness of your screen. I really recommend it to set it to 100% because the screen is not so bright anyways, and you might have a problem to read it at full sunlight. In the left corner here you can see the histogram, and it might help you to know how the light is distributed in your image, but I would really recommend to use false colors. And of course you have other indicators like audio meters and the discs that you're using. Now let's go to the settings. The first thing is to choose the codec family, and it's either Blackmagic RAW, ProRes RAW or ProRes. The choice is quite simple. Most people use Blackmagic RAW, but just to quickly go through all of them, the ProRes is the most output-ready option. Everything is kind of ready and baked into the video. So it's good when you want to make a quick video and not go through color grading and post-production. There you can choose the quality level from HQ, that's the best, to proxy, that's the worst. Then we have the ProRes RAW. It was introduced in the newest firmware update, and I would tend to use Blackmagic RAW. Blackmagic RAW is a compressed RAW codec that's visually lossless, so it's very difficult to spot the compression. I think that Blackmagic RAW is the biggest strength of this camera, so I would recommend you using it. Then you have to choose the quality. Here it's divided to constant bitrate and constant quality. To simplify it, constant bitrate sets just one bitrate, one compression level, and keeps it through the whole video, no matter how the scene is complicated. And constant quality changes the bitrate on the go, depending on the complexity of the scene that you're recording. I won't get into more details here because I have a separate video that deeply compares those two options, constant bitrate and constant quality, and there you can see them side by side and compared to each other. And now we have to choose the resolution. The highest resolution is here, 4K DCI, and it's a bit wider than normal Ultra HD. I would recommend to go with the highest resolution so that you can use all your sensor, but there is a very important thing about choosing resolution. When you are using Blackmagic RAW, choosing lower resolution doesn't use the whole sensor. As you can see, it says sensor windowed. This is 4K DCI, and this is the same frame with HD. The sensor is cropped, so you won't get just lower resolution, you will get also different framing. It works like this only on RAW recordings, so using ProRes you can choose HD and you will get your full frame just scaled down. Then we have the dynamic range, and I really recommend using film because it gives you the least changed output. So as you can see, the image is kind of washed out, kind of gray, but that's what you are looking for, because then it's very flexible to color grading. And if you choose, for example, video, the curve is already much more aggressive, but you shouldn't worry too much. Using BRAW you can change it later in post-production, but using ProRes you are actually going to bake in the dynamic range that you are going to select. So it's really worth setting the right one. And also regarding dynamic range, you can see that the screen is washed out, but that's not a problem because you can assign a button to 3D LUT and then you can see the image as it was already transformed or color graded. Then we have sensor area, but it doesn't apply here because we are using Blackmagic RAW. If you use ProRes and use lower resolution, then you can set the sensor area to the 4K, so scaled down full frame, or to HD, so the cropped one. So a similar situation as with Blackmagic RAW. Then we have an obvious setting, it's project frame rate, and here you just choose what frame rate the recording will be. For normal video, I recommend using 24 FPS. It's something that we are used to from the cinema, it's not really the only way to shoot, but the more important thing is to match this project frame rate with the other videos that you are going to use. Then we have off-speed recording, and it's really useful because you can set what is the frame rate that you are going to record, and then the camera slows down the footage to the project frame rate. So in this case I have 24 FPS. But when I turn the off-speed recording on and here is 60, the camera records 60, it's shown here, but plays it back as 24. This way the recording will be automatically slowed down. I find this setting very useful. You can toggle it quickly using HFR button, here, high frame rate, and then you can change it on the go. It's really great while you are filming nature and wildlife, you want to make a quick slow motion, just remember to turn it off again. Then we have preferred media for recording, that's kind of straightforward. I use USB-C, so I select USB-C. And next we have time-lapse settings. Of course here you can turn it on, and then you can choose the interval for capturing every frame. For example, if you are filming sunset, it's great to set it to 5 to 10 seconds, it works really well then. Just remember to turn it off before normal recording. Then we have the detail sharpening, and I really encourage you to turn it off because you want to have full control over your sharpening. Of course, if you are using ProRes and want to do completely no post-production, then turn it on and maybe set it to medium. But for most of the recording, keep it off. Then we have the choice in what the camera should do when the drive drops the frame, so when something goes wrong in your recording. Then you can choose to apply LUT in the file. It's just as metadata, so it won't burn into your footage. It's just an additional information. I don't need it. I use the LUT only as a monitoring tool. Then we have Gamut compression, and that's a new setting from the new firmware, and that's also metadata, so it's not baked into your footage. You can turn it on and off in DaVinci Resolve. It just compresses the colors that are very highly saturated and close to clipping. But I turn it off because if I want, I can use it also in post-production. Then we have the vertical recording setting. It just allows the camera to rotate the recording so that you can record vertically or horizontally. You can lock it in one direction or just leave it at auto, and when you tilt your camera or rotate it, it will change the orientation. And that's it for the record tab. Then we go to the monitor tab, and here you set a lot of settings connected to monitoring and what you see on the screen. As you can see, there are two categories, LCD and HDMI. LCD is everything you see on this camera screen, and HDMI is everything you see through the HDMI output, and it goes to your external monitor, for example. Let's focus on LCD right now. So first you can turn on Clean Feed. Clean Feed just doesn't show anything on your screen, pure video. Then we have Display LUT. It turns on the LUT, that's the same thing that I have assigned to my F2 button right here. It's very useful and I really recommend to use it. Apart from bumping contrast and colors to see your output video, it might also make the screen easier to see in bright daylight. And then we have the settings that we also can change right here in the corner. So that's the thing that I showed you at the start of the video. Here we have the zebra, focus assist, frame guide, grid, safe area guide, and false color. Then we have the status text, and it's kind of similar to clean feed, but it leaves the false colors and grid and every setting like zebra. So it just removes the text from your screen. Then we can choose to display meters like audio and histogram, or codec and resolution that you can see right here, codec and resolution. Then we can use anamorphic de-squeeze if we have anamorphic lenses. The next page covers the monitoring settings that I covered on the previous screen, like the percentages for overexposure on zebra, skin tone zebra, focus assist color. Here I recommend using red or maybe green. You can change it depending on the scene. For example, green while recording grass would not be very helpful, so it's better to choose a color that stands out. And we can choose focus assist type. I recommend using colored lines. It works really well and you can clearly see if there is focus on your image or if it's not. As you can see now, the focus is on the tree and now it's on the foreground. And you can also set the level here. Then you have the rest of monitoring settings like frame guides, safe area guide, guides opacity, a bit more detailed settings, so you can go in depth right here, but it's also covered previously. And then we have HDMI, and it's everything that goes to your external monitor. I use an external monitor and I really like that you can separate some of the signals. So for example, you can send false colors onto your external monitor, but not onto your preview. Then we have the audio settings, and here you can of course set different microphones. You can use no microphone or you can use the camera microphones like this. You set camera left and camera right, and then the left and right channels are used. When using XLR mic, you can use phantom power, but if you're using a microphone that's plugged into a jack output, you can just set it like I do. So 3.5 millimeters left and 3.5 millimeters right. Then we can also choose the standard of audio meter and headphones and speaker volume, but I set it at default because I don't use it that much. And then we can go to setup. Here of course you can change basic information like the name of the camera, the language, the date, and you can see the software version. And now we have very important settings here. In the shutter measurement you can choose between shutter angle and shutter speed. But I really recommend using shutter angle. It's much better suited for cinema cameras and video overall. As you can see, my shutter is set to 180 degrees. Also here you can see the auto exposure. I don't recommend using it. I recommend to set the shutter to a constant value and keep it. And use things like ND filters to change your exposure, not the shutter itself. When you use shutter speed, you can see that the shutter is now set to 1/48 of a second. It corresponds to 180 degrees. It's just another way to say the same thing. But the important part of choosing shutter angle is that if you change your frame rate, for example using HFR, and now the frame rate is changed to 60, the relationship between the frame and the interval of exposure stays the same. So 180 means that the exposure time is half the time of the frame. But when I have it set to shutter speed, then it's okay, 1/120th, but if I change it again, it stays at 1/120th, it doesn't change. I really recommend using shutter angle. This way you can make sure that your shutter is consistent throughout your recordings, no matter the frame rate that you are using. And another very important thing is flicker-free shutter based on, and you can choose if it's based on 50 Hz or 60 Hz. And it doesn't work automatically. So it's not that you set it to 50 in Europe and then you have no flicker. No, it changes the recommended shutter that is displayed here. And those shutters are the ones that will probably not provide flicker. That's the closest one to 180. When it comes to sensitivity measurement, I tend to use ISO. And when it comes to ISO, it's important to understand that this camera has dual native ISO. And the reference points are 400 and 3200. The most important thing to note is that the 1000 ISO will be much more noisy in the shadows than 1250. It's a bit more complex than that, and I will make a video about ISO in the future. And then we can set the camera to use it as a webcam. Then we have lens stabilization, and here it's grayed out because I don't have stabilization in this particular lens. But if you had stabilization, I really recommend turning it on. Of course, if you know that this stabilization is good. In my Olympus lens, the stabilization is a night and day difference. But there is one thing. if you have the lens stabilization turned on, you won't be able to use gyro stabilization from the gyro sensor in the camera. So you have to choose, but in most cases lens stabilization is much better than the gyro in the camera. Then we can set function buttons, and it's something that I told you before. Here you can play with it and see what you like, but I really recommend setting F1 to false color, F2 to display LUT, and F3 to grid. And this setup lets me quickly change my settings, see my exposure, see the overall framing, and it makes my work much quicker and much easier. Then we can of course set where those parameters will be shown. So we can set if it goes to external monitor or to LCD, or both. In the new firmware update, they added settings for zoom rocker from DaVinci, so if you have it, you can set it here, and also focus demand. Then you can set auto dim display if your display should go a bit darker if you are not using it, and set the time 10, 5 and 1 minute. It's very useful to save battery. Then tally light LED. Here you turn the light while recording on and off, and you can set the brightness of it. For example, if you don't want the camera to be seen in your scene, it's wise to turn it off. But usually I leave it on because I want to know if something went wrong and the camera, for example, stopped recording. Then you can change the color range of this light. I keep it at all colors, so it can show me different kind of notifications through the color of the light. Then some quality of life features like playback. You can set the playback to show all the clips or just one clip. I like to keep it at all clips because I think that it's easy to select one clip and then click play twice, and then I have one clip selected. Then we have network connection, and here you can change the different network settings like connection priority, also remote control if you have it, and you can set remote password here. You can also set up Bluetooth here, you can turn it on. On the last page of the setup you can make a factory reset, so reset the camera, calibrate motion sensor for the gyro stabilization, calibrate image sensor, and calibrate the screen. You don't have to play with it when everything is okay. Then you have the presets tab. Here you can create the preset of your current settings and save them so that after some firmware updates you can have your settings saved, or you can import them from your card. And the last part is LUTs, and here you choose the LUT that is assigned to the 3D LUT key on your camera. I recommend using Gen 5 film to extended video because it will probably be the closest to what you will achieve after color grading. You can also import more LUTs here, and it's not a problem at all to change it. If you want to know more, check out this video next. I also wanted to thank you for 1000 subscribers, it really motivates me to go on with my films. Thanks for watching, and remember, let your films be shot by reality.